keep with that. Let's go.
Sir, thank you very much. Thank you very much for taking so much time from a very, very busy schedule. We all know how much busy you are. And so thanks for coming and spending some time with us. I want to recognize, which I did not do earlier, the presence of key people from the Finance Ministry. We have with us Dr. Kaushik Basu, our Chief Economic Advisor. Thank you very much, sir, for being here. Mr. Gopalan, Secretary Economic Affairs. We have Mr. Sumit Bose, Secretary Expenditure. And we have Mr. Mohammed Halim Khan, Secretary Disinvestment. So once again, thanks all of you to be here. Yeah, the Finance Minister has kindly agreed to take a few questions, not too many. He is pressed for time. So I'm going to ask, name people so that the first question will be asked by Mr. Jamshed Godrej. The next two are Sunil Munjal and Shobha. So be prepared, and Jamshed. Shobna, please. Yeah. Yeah, Jamshed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Finance Minister, I want to comment on an issue which is particularly close to my heart. And I was very pleased to see that the Economic Survey this time carries a large chapter on sustainable development. And I do want to thank you and the Chief Economic Advisor for that chapter. It is the case for sustainable development has been very well laid out in that chapter. And I think that over time, we need to be able to reflect the ideas that have been mentioned in the budget. And I'm specifically coming to issues on energy and on the issue of how industry can react to a much better situation on sustainable development. For instance, you can give special incentives for vehicles which have high energy efficiency, high fuel efficiency. You can do the same for electrical appliances. You can do the same for energy production. And I think there is a whole host of issues here which can be extremely beneficial. The Prime Minister's Council on Climate Change recommended a tariff, a tax on coal, which would fund renewable energy to go for solar energy and for wind energy and other forms of sustainable energy. And I think that India actually is one of the very few countries in the world which have done this. And this is great kudos for us to have done it. But at the same time, when you give the signal of rolling back import duty on coal, I think that there is a bit of a disconnect there. So I'm trying to say, basically, that let us have a dialogue with you, with the Finance Ministry, on how we can actually change the way taxation is done and the incentives that are made today by moving to sustainable development incentives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do agree with you that there should be, first of all, I would like to say on all issues, not only on energy, but on all issues, we are always ready to have dialogue and to understand each other's point and try to get it implemented. But here in another sector, I will require your support and also in your own way, industry, leaders of the industry, if they can carry the message that why we require energy and how all sources of energy are to be tapped. I will give you just one example of the nuclear energy. Thank God that we have been able to resolve the issues of the Kudankulam. Almost every state which earlier showed its interest for the nuclear power plant are coming back, and agitation is going on about the acquisition of the land, because some accident in some parts of the world has completely shaken. And just shut your eyes. I am not going to mention the states. Each and every state agitation is going on. The agitation in Kudankulam, whatever damage has taken place in regard to the production. Take the case of Hydel. 3 projects starting from Lohari Nagpala to the upstream of 100 kilometers of Bhagirathi, we had to abandon. Just yesterday's newspaper, you have seen a photograph. I am not making any comment on any individual, that he underwent fast for demanding that not up to 100 kilometers, my commitment had been that from Gangotri to 100 kilometers, there will be no Hydel power plant. 3 existing power plants, including Lohari Nagpala, where investment has been made by NHPC to the extent of 700 crores, have been abandoned. But even in the downstream on the run of the river project, agitations are going on. So, Hydel sources exploitation are becoming more and more difficult. Capacity building in the nuclear sector, even after civil nuclear cooperation agreement, taking the risk of the existence of government, we entered into it, got the rich dividend. With 3 major countries we have entered into arrangements, but domestic agitations are going on. Therefore, taxation issues, coal linkage, coal production, fine. But the other sources of the energy, because country is having energy famine, in almost no 5-year plan, we have reached the target. In no 5-year plan. Last 5-year plan, our target was 78,000 megawatts. Revised target was 62,000 megawatts. And ultimately, we will not be achieved more than 55,000 megawatts. Solar energy, wind energy, other non-conventional energy, we are giving emphasis. But the major sources of the energy, if we cannot build up some sort of consensus, whether it is Subansiri project in Arunachal, or whether it is a project in Uttarkashi on the as run of the river project on Ganges, if everywhere the agitation starts, then how the energy requirement from multiple sources could be met? Substantially, we are finding the problems. These are the practical problems which are, it's just like the where the shoe pinches. It's not a theoretical proposition. Even if we want to substitute our low quality coal by high quality coal, the type of the capacity of the port to handle and the transport arrangements which are to be made are so vast that it is really becoming a challenging task. And where we could have achieved much more without making any problem, but unless we change our mindset and give up the agitation on this plea or that plea, that's the issue. Kaushik, would you like to add anything?
No, just literally one word, that this is the intersection between energy, sustainability and economic growth. Very often these are treated as 2 separate compartments. But it was really with this in mind that it ought to be an integral part of our macroeconomic path that the chapter was brought in. And the energy requirements of our country are huge, but we have to do it keeping in mind the sustainability and the other fallouts of that. So I just wanted to emphasize that. Thank you.
One more question, then you
Yeah.
can leave me and others can stay.
Is it? Can I ask Mr. Rahul Bajaj?
I thought you were going to ask Shobna and Sunil.
Yeah, I have just shortcut that thing. I'm sorry about that, but we'll come back.
Look, I'm going to speak only about one subject, because the last 9 days we have been hearing you on TV and on various things, and I know you are tired of listening to this. But then we have called you, and you, at least the kind of person I am, we have not called you to compliment you. I mean, you have done many good things. You have heard about it. You are aware of it. and Rahul Bajaj cannot compliment you only for the good things. So there are two things in the corporate sector we are concerned with. Second one, some others will speak, that is part of GAAR. We don't like people who cheat, just as we don't like income tax officers who are corrupt. Anti-avoidance rules, welcome. But you can't arrest a guy on the authority of even a commissioner or even a CBDT chairman. It's judicial or executive. There must be a judicial body authorizing any arrest. It can't, what I have understood, it can't be left to the income tax department at any level. But somebody else will speak on that, sir. I'm coming on only the retrospectivity. Now, the way you have argued the case, who am I to oppose it? But the entire corporate sector, this is one provision which no one has supported. Many in the corporate sector have welcomed the budget from various angles. I won't go into that. Everybody other than, sir, you and your colleagues sitting here, of course, have had to do this. Apart from wanting to know which are the other, we'll also find out which are the other countries where this applies. I'm not aware of UK and US, but we'll find that out, and I'm sure you are aware of that. We would also like to know within 6 years, because there is that provision.
Right, Cameraman, please allow me to listen to, see the face. You are just disturbing everyone everywhere. Rahul, don't mind if you repeat the question.
I don't want any confidential information, sir, but we would also like to know at some appropriate time, during the last 6 years, I'm not talking of 16 years, you have clarified that. So I'm not personally worried about it. If some people have black money in foreign countries, in fact, I'll toward the end come to that, they should be sent to jail as far as I'm concerned. Point is, you have not prosecuted anybody in India, barring one guy from Pune, some Hassan Ali, unless you prosecute them here, not convict anymore, prosecute and send a letter regulatory to say a Swiss bank or Swiss government. How do you get information? A roving inquiry is still not allowed. But that's another issue, sir. On the retrospectivity, during the last 6 years, no confidential information, how many cases are likely to be opened of foreign or Indian companies? What is the revenue loss or gain to the government by not having gone retrospectively? The provision you have made, I personally am fully in support, prospectively. You can't earn money in India, in Indian assets, and pay no taxes here or anywhere else. As you said, DDTA, Double Taxation Avoidance Agreement, or tax information exchange agreement. Just as you shouldn't pay tax twice, I agree there should not be a situation where you pay tax nowhere. The question, and India cannot be a no-tax country. We can't afford to be. We are a very poor people. We know the poverty levels here. But sir, this retrospectivity, when if our interpretation was wrong of whatever was done in 62 or whenever it was done, this thing called the Supreme Court also is wrong. Your review thing also fell flat. Now you may go in for presidential reference, I won't go into all that. We didn't make a mistake because Supreme Court is with us. That's all that we are asking. I'll come to revenue. Revenue is a reason, but other things, example, constitutionally you have a right to make retrospective. I'm not contesting that. Almost every finance bill has those provisions. I'm not contesting that. But we haven't shouted. Barring the ITC case, which your predecessor, which Chidambaram was there, we haven't shouted at that. Why are we screaming about this? I'm not personally involved at all. But domestic people who did not withhold the money, withhold the taxes, foreigners, everybody is saying this has become a signal against India. Partly may be wrong, partly may be exaggerated, sir. The fact is you can't ignore one provision in this budget. There are many important provisions, many good provisions, some minor negatives. Forget them. Why so much hue and cry? 90% of us are not affected. 98% of us are not affected here. But we are worried tomorrow what will happen. So something like this. So if revenue is the consideration, I can't say tax, excise duty 12% or surtax, service charge 12% or raise the taxes. I mean, I'll be massacred by my colleagues here. But there are various ways to raise additional taxes, what you would lose here. I mean, economic and political conditions very difficult. You have made that clear. We know that, sir. But disinvestment, not privatization, disinvestment from 40,000 didn't go to 70, 80, 90,000. I don't know the figures. This time you didn't start for 11 months. And then ONGC was, politicians didn't shout. It was just a mess the way it was implemented. I don't know who was responsible. The mistakes were made, aggressive pricing, etc., etc. Raise much more through that. And I know politically there will be no problem. Disinvestment, you have said in the budget, we will maintain 51% and the right to manage. Do that. I would prefer privatization. But let's forget it. That's not possible till after the next parliament elections. So when you will come with 272.
Yeah, Rahul, I think point has been well made.
So with all these things, raise money even through, I would say, that is politically difficult. Amnesty scheme, only foreign countries, tax at 40%. So moral arguments are over. Last time, make a law that after that if money is found, we'll put you to jail, 100% confiscation, etc., etc. I'm suggesting that only to raise funds. So this one thing which we are very disturbed about, I'm very afraid to mention it after the way you supported it, but sir, we just can't understand this.
Thank you, Rahul. Almost a mini speech in Parliament. I deeply appreciate it. 2 points I will very shortly say. Yes, Supreme Court is the ultimate interpreter of the law. And the moment Supreme Court stated and the review petition was rejected, I have instructed the department to return the money. But most respectfully, I would like to submit. Umpteen number of cases we have seen. The judgment of the Supreme Court, in the context of the judgment of the Supreme Court, law has been amended. In fact, one of the very earliest amendments to the Constitution, I am not talking of any law, earliest amendment of the Constitution took place and a new article was inserted in the Constitution by enactment of Parliament, even when Council of State was not created, Rajya Sabha was not created. Constitution was adopted in 1950. A court judgment came in 1951. Parliament, in the context of that judgment, amended the law and inserted a new clause to protect the intention of the legislatures in the Constitution itself. This is arising out of the Kameshwar Singh versus State of Bihar. Then second, the question came that how could you amend the Constitution when one house of the Parliament has not been constituted? Rajya Sabha came to exist in 1952. Supreme Court gave the right that no, Parliament has the right. The most respectful point I am submitting respectfully that I do agree Supreme Court is the ultimate interpreter of the law, but that does not take away the right of the legislature to express its intention. Second point which I am talking of, whether a particular case gets special attention or not, that depends on the nature of the case, and I am not going into that. To my mind, here the apprehension was that whether all cases can be reopened from the date of enactment. To that my answer is no. Question is that whether large number of cases will do, no. But at the same time, I shall also have to protect myself. I am not holding my money. I am the custodian of the money given by 120 crore of the people through taxation. And I am to ensure whether if I have, otherwise as member of Parliament, you will accuse me that what steps you have taken when you had the legal right. Therefore, what I say that if our intention is not to convert India into a no taxation country, if we have the intention of protecting the interest of the investors from the double taxation, let us utilize the existing instrumentality of DTAA, of Tax Exchange Information Agreement, and I am sorry, but it is inevitable. Interpretation of the tax laws is not new in India. It is everywhere in every part of the world. In respect of Section 58, the latest judgment which has come in UK, in the case of Isle of Man, they have indicated that yes, tax exemption cannot be claimed at the expense of the general taxpayers who are filling in the exchequer. But this is a legal issue. I am not, as I mentioned, that I am not a legal expert. So it will continue, but I can assure the industry no intention of opening the plethora of the old cases on this plea or that plea, because that is simply not permissible in our law. Thank you.
The Finance Minister has agreed to take one question, but only if it is from a lady. So I will ask Shobana to ask that question.
Thanks for the gender equality. Sir, I just would like to take you back to a year ago when at the same time Dr. Naresh Trehan and I made that impassioned plea at Vignan Bhavan for you to roll back service tax on healthcare. I can tell you that lakhs of people have benefited from that, and we thank you for keeping it in the negative list again. So I think there's hope for Rahul. Your speech was equally impassioned. But having said that, I'd like to bring out where your heart is this year in healthcare was, I think, a clarion call to the country and people in this industry that the country is committed to do more for healthcare, recognize that the government will spend more in that sector, and also encourage industry to continue. 80% of healthcare expenditure in the country comes from the private sector, and the impetus you've given us, a couple of things I'd like to highlight, has really gone in that direction. Number one, about putting us as a subcategory of infrastructure. Great move. Next year we hope for the full thing, and we'd like to demonstrate to you that this will allow us, every healthcare, whether it's a hospital, a nursing home, even in education, so it's like medical colleges, nursing colleges, the whole plethora will now be able to access infrastructure funding, which is a great benefit, and it should encourage us to put more of these facilities and make healthcare in India a very robust. More than that, you've gone one step further and improving the rate of investment-linked deduction for capital expenditure is now proposed to be from 100% to 150% for hospitals over 100 beds. I think this is another great step. Coming to the individuals, you've recognized that there is medical inflation, that the cost of healthcare has gone up, and for that you've increased the deductions. Great step was the 5,000 rupees, but may I just, respond to that the 5,000 rupees deduction for medical checkups is only for people who are insured, and only 10% of India is really insured. So, you're leaving out the other people, and I think that if this could be freestanding for that 5,000, it would really create, the India, which is supposed to be the diabetes capital and the heart capital, the heart disease capital, the cancer capital. All this will really go a long way in helping that. We hope that you'll consider that. And just the last thing I can say is that while the rest of this room and the rest of India might be battling with all the burdens of the economy and the other pressures that they might speak about, I can tell you that you've laid the foundation for at least making India healthier. So we thank you for that one.
Thank you very much. Before I ask my colleague Mr. Gopalan to respond to your question, I would just like to make a general proposition about the taxation proposal which we have done this year. First of all, as I mentioned, that I could not examine in details the recommendations of the Standing Committee on Direct Tax Code because it came too late, and we will have the time to look into it. Some provisions of the DTC I have taken into account, and the apprehension which Rahul has expressed about the misuse of guard, that we shall have to careful and we shall have to take note of it, because job of the income tax department is not that of the policeman, and we are concerned with realization of the taxes, not to sit on the judgment of whether it is a crime or not. But that's a different issue. We shall have to address that. The only point which I am trying, that this year I am hoping on the one hand that we will move to the DTC, where plethora of the exemptions we shall have to give up, and we shall have to address the tax rates, plain, simple, procedure, plain and simple. On the indirect tax side, there is a requirement, I have just mentioned in one sentence in my observations, that there is a need of alignment of the taxes between the central and the state if we want to move to the GST, and in the central taxes between service tax and the excise duties, because the basic principles that both goods and services should have the same rate of taxes compel us to have the alignment, and current year the alignment I have made at 12%. Incidentally, before the crisis, excise duty was not 12%, it was 14%. As a stimulus package, we reduced the rate, and I have reverted back to 12%. Excise service tax also 12%, to have the alignment between the two central taxes. And when we will move to GST, then we will like to have the alignment with the state taxes around that. Now, in respect of the others, I will request Gopalan to respond.
The important aspect this year has been getting the definition for infrastructure for certain sectors identified and listed, so that it is available for all regulators to take them in the same way as the list has been prepared. Now, there is a standing mechanism which will take into account further suggestions for changes to that list, and we are getting a number of suggestions as well, and we will take these issues to the standing mechanism and try and resolve.
Yeah, let me make one announcement. The CI had the privilege of partnering the Ministry of Finance in organizing the Delhi Economic Conclave in 2011, last year. Today we are delighted to sign an MOU with the Ministry of Finance for this partnership to continue for the next 3 years. We are certain that the DEC would become one of the key thoughts. Thank you.